I never noticed how much your fingers look like toes. That's so weird. You got short, stubby fingers. Look how bad your fingers are, dude. Those are weird. Put your hands next to each other. Is your left hand shorter? Look at how... Whoa, your left fingers are shorter than your right fingers.
They're the same. These are the
Alex,
same. What are you
no.
about?
Put the palms equal, buddy.
They are equal. That is totally shifted. You shifted the right way further. These are equal. When you shift them,
look at how high the right ones are.
If you shift them like that, they're different. But as long as you keep them normal, they're normal.
You have a weird hand.
Oh my gosh, you have a weird hand.
You got a weird
Nobody's
hand.
got weird hands here. Nobody's got weird hands.
Hey, he's got 5 fingers. I've got 7 shows. The end of April in Las Vegas. Come hang out if you're in Vegas. That'd be great. Now we're, I don't know if I'm supposed to promote those. It's at Brad Garrett's Comedy Club, which is kind of cool because I'll get to hang out with Brad Garrett.
I don't know who that is.
You do know who he is. He's the brother in Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh yeah. The deep voice one.
Yeah, that's Brad Garrett.
Cool. Nice.
And so, cool. Nice. And he's not bitter at all that you know who Ray Romano is, but you don't know who he is.
Well, it's because the show is Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah,
they named it after him.
Yeah, that was the thing to do too. Like even like the Cosby Show was called the Cosby Show, but he played Dr. Huxtable.
Well, what's interesting is like I was thinking about that the other day because I saw a picture of Al Borland and I was like, it's weird that his character's name in Tim the Toolman Taylor was just Al.
Yeah,
and Tim's name was Tim.
Yeah.
Like they gave them different last names, but they had the same first name. And they did that with all their characters. That's weird that was the thing that they did in 90s sitcoms.
Well, it's because it was built around
that character.
Like celebrities were a different thing then, man.
Yeah.
We have a different culture. So anyway, what's the episode about?
Have you ever heard of Alfred Nobel? Vitamin D, baby. Okay, I'll stop.
No, thank you for stopping. That'd be great.
I won't do it again.
I've spent my whole life bombing, and now it's time to love bomb. Things I learned last night. Yeah, from the show, he plays Alfred, but they changed his last name.
It might need to be pronounced.
He plays
Nobel. Alfred Nobel. Is it
Nobel?
Yeah.
Oh, so Nobel.
Alfred Nobel.
Okay, so for people who are not watching and who are just listening, is this a painting? This is a painting.
Yeah, this is a painting
of him. So this is an older. This guy's probably in his like later 50s, early 60s, and he's wearing like a suit. He looks like an inventor in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Okay, 1800s inventor.
Yeah.
Is this the Nobel Peace Prize guy?
If
I think this would be. I think you said it wrong on purpose just to try to throw off.
Okay.
Because look, he's got beakers and he's got.
No, if you're an audio listener, picture if the neighbor who shoveled snow in Home Alone was a scientist.
That is true. He does look just like that guy. And here's the thing. Can I guess the story based on just this picture?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's a science teacher who gets cancer, and so now he's got to figure out how to pay for it. And so now he's enlisted one of his old students, and they bought an RV, and now he's in the woods out here just making meth. Did this guy invent meth?
So here's another picture of him. This
he looks like
might
he
be
invented
an early
meth.
Photograph.
Yeah, this might be a picture.
This might be.
His ears are huge.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That was a thing about being a man back then. You got big ears.
You got tiny ears.
You got tiny ears.
I'm looking at you, man. I'm talking to you.
I didn't see it.
You have tiny ears.
Yeah, I do.
The way that like the headphones, because look how tiny those headphones look in my ears. Can you guys? Hey, Robert, can you zoom in on this? All right, show him your weird thing. No,
show your weird thing.
No. Show him the other one. No,
the other
Tim,
one's
there.
bigger?
You go. Look at the weird left ear he's got.
Why is that? Is that one different?
Yeah, it is.
Cut them. Put them side by side, real quick.
No, because the other one looks normal. Your ear is doing a weird push thing, especially when you put your fingers up like that. It looks like this.
What? What do we do? What is
I'm just making fun of how short your fingers are.
Oh my gosh. I think something happened in the middle of between episodes today where you're just like, I'm going to make Tim insecure this episode. I think this is what you said. I think you sat down.
Are you an AMC StubHub member?
An AMC StubHub
member? Are you a member of the AMC StubHub?
No. Are
you? You should be with those stubs.
Oh my gosh. We cannot allow this to become a bit where you just clap at your own jokes. That is so insane, and I do not want that to become a thing. I do not want that to become a thing.
I don't know, dude. I felt like the last episode was like, it was kind of like a, hey, the world's full of bad people. And so I'm trying to make this a little more lighthearted.
Yeah. Well, there were just good people in that story, all the people who exposed the truth.
That's true.
And then they died in car bombs.
Gosh. Okay, welcome to the podcast.
So Alfred Nobel, he was born in 1833 in Stockholm, Sweden.
Okay, so I nailed it. That's 1860s.
Yeah. His dad, Emmanuel, was a lifelong inventor, which I listened to Notebook LM podcast about this. And the way they put it was they said he was a lifelong inventor, which means he was bad with money.
They said that?
That's what they said.
And we keep saying they. Do you know, for listener, if we've covered it before, but if you don't know what Notebook LM is, it's where you can put documents into Google and then it'll generate a podcast.
Based on the documents you get.
And it sounds like the co-hosts have chemistry.
Yeah, they have chemistry.
They make little jokes. You can hear them breathe.
Yeah, they have they'll mispronounce things and then repronounce it. Like they try to make it sound like a real human. Yeah.
They literally they'll do this where they're kind of starting a sentence and then they'll change their mind and they'll stumble and change the way they say
exactly
stuff.
like that. It's very strange.
So weird.
They're trying to make it feel human, and it feels it's close. It's not.
So,
it's
there's
not
only moments where
there's
sometimes where something happened. You go, oh yeah, this isn't real.
Yeah,
but like
it is. It's like right on the edge of the uncanny valley where you're like, this isn't real. But
I know
it's close. It's close.
Yeah. Oh, it's weird. Anyway,
yeah. But yeah, the fact that they said he was an inventor, which just means he was bad with money. Because
and also it said I'm not going to start referring to the Notebook LM podcast hosts as they.
Thank you.
I actually yelled. I had to call Hertz rental car the other day, and I yelled at the thing because it said, "Hi, I'm Haley. I'm here to help you. I can help you with this." And I said, "Your name is not Haley. You're not a person." And I was just in a Panda Express parking lot, yelling on speakerphone, "You're not real."
Okay.
No, for real though. You know what? If Hertz sees this out there in the world, I hate that.
Yeah.
Use an AI assistant. I don't care. Do not try to give them names.
Yeah.
And then try to be like,
this is the person.
It sounded like a real person, and then it started going through the options, and I went, "Oh no, you're not real. You're not real. You're not real. You're not real.
Yeah.
You're not real. You're not real."
You can't hurt me. You can't hurt me. You can't hurt me.
Oh man. Hey, we got a new company that moved in next door, and so they're just finding out how loud we are. So
yeah,
what do they do again?
We drove the therapist out of town. They're appliance repair.
Appliance repair. That's right.
Yeah.
Well,
so Emmanuel, his dad, constantly inventing stuff, starting little businesses, but constantly going bankrupt because he can't run the business.
Oh, so he really was bad.
He has some decent ideas.
It wasn't just a joke. They were they were giving you the backstory.
Yeah. So he has decent ideas, but he can't run a business.
What's he trying to invent?
Lots of different random things. It really is kind of like we talked about it in another episode, like the 90s infomercial people, where it's just really random products. That
what episode were we talking about that in?
It was the balloon boy.
Oh wow,
right?
I'm really proud of you.
Vitamin D, baby.
I don't like a bit where you do that at the end of the things. I don't like where you go full honeycomb cereal character. Okay?
Okay, I'll stop. I'll stop.
No, thank you for stopping. That'd be great.
I won't do it again. Sorry, that was a mistake.
I had to do that at a show. I made a joke. I made a joke at one of my shows. I wrote a cancer joke, and it doesn't work. It does kind of work. It's funny to some. It's not funny to other people.
Yeah.
And I did it at the show in Dallas. They did not like it. Also, there was a person at the Dallas show who said, when I walked in the lobby, it was like, Jaren's light is my might. And I need you to know, I was not rushing, like, because I just went, haha, good to see you. I was late to get to this gig because of the rain and stuff. So I wasn't trying to be like, don't talk to me. I'm sorry if that's, because I was trying to find you after the show.
Yeah.
To be like, hey, and I know you listen to the podcast. I was trying to find you after the show to be like, hey, good to see you. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Yeah. And then you left. So I didn't want you to think that I didn't want to talk to you. I
want you to know, if I ran into you in public and you said Jaren's light is my might, I would have stopped and I would have talked to you. No matter how late I was. I want you to know I'd be late.
That if we're in public and you say that to me, I will.
If you're in public and you say that to me, I will in your face go. And all your friends that you're with will be like, what the heck is that guy?
Yeah, it's just a weird trigger phrase he's got. He's like Jason Bourne, dude. You say his trigger phrase and then that comes out.
Turns into the honeycomb guy from that cereal in the early 2000s.
So... Yeah, so he wasn't going money. He was inventing.
No. You were in the middle of your story about your bad joke. You never finished that story.
Yeah, I told the joke. It didn't work. And then and what happens in stand-up is if a joke doesn't work, you just gotta keep going. And so I go to a different joke, and then that joke wasn't working. I literally had to be like, hey, I feel like I lost a lot of you on that last joke. I'm really sorry. I said, I'll never do it again. I'm sorry. And then at the end of the show, I opened it up for questions. I was like, hey, has anybody got any questions? Lady in the front row goes, yeah, don't do the cancer joke. And I went, okay, got it. Understood. Totally won't do it again. And then a couple other people started raising their hands and being like, oh, we actually really liked that joke. And I was like, wow, we got conflicting opinions. And then another person was like, as a person whose mom had cancer, I'm like, hey, does anybody have any questions that aren't about the joke I did?
Aren't about the
I was like, you guys are really focused on 20 seconds of my show that didn't go well. It's been an hour. Can anybody go questions about any other 58 minutes that I did? Oh, I was so bad. People are like, what's the joke? I can't do it.
It's a good joke.
It's a good joke.
But it's a bad joke.
It's a bad, and that's
it's a bad joke.
That's the whole thing. Is I'm trying to set it up. The joke is that it's a bad joke. Because the real joke is that I do the joke, and then people get mixed reactions. Some people laugh, some people go, oh. And then I go, yeah, see, I told my wife that joke this week. I thought of it, and she went, Jaren, you cannot say that. No. Which is why I had to say it. Yeah. And then that's like the joke. And then I do a little bit more about how it's funny that like I know I'm doing something really funny. Or I said on the podcast too. Mm-hmm. When me and my wife listen to episodes we're driving, I know that I've got a really good bit when she goes, Jaren.
Yeah.
You know, if I make her laugh, that's fun. That's fine. But if I make her go, Jaren, that's too far, then I know I'm right on the mark.
The setup of the joke is the joke to set up the fact that the joke is,
and that's what I'm saying. So it's a bad joke. I need to write I think
different
it's
bad joke.
I think it's too far. I think it's just past the acceptable line of edginess for me.
Yeah, you got to tiptoe.
I gotta bring it. I gotta find a way to bring it back. But that's what, and not to do too big of a tangent. That's what I love about stand up.
Yeah,
is like that's
finding that balance.
But usually audiences give you a little bit more grace than I got in Dallas. All right.
Hey, don't do the cancer joke anymore.
And then I said, you want me to biopsy the joke? I got you. And I was like, I'm doubling down, baby. It's not a good joke.
So his dad, Emmanuel, was like this disgraced inventor, constantly making new things, constantly going bankrupt. And so the family was very poor.
Yeah.
The children, they begged in the streets for money because they just had nothing. And so that was what they did all day. He was born chronically ill, constantly sick throughout the course of his life.
Alfred was?
Yeah, Alfred was. Mm-hmm. And then his dad, Emmanuel, in the early or late 1830s, moves to St. Petersburg, which in Russia. To rebuild himself.
And this is during the Enlightenment in Russia, right?
I think so. I'd have to double check dates, but I think you're right. And so he moves to St. Petersburg. He starts inventing things, and then while he's there, he has a pretty big idea, and he says, "We've got mines. What if we found a way to put mines in water and make them float? And so that way, boats can't drive through here."
Like
bombs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, we got those. What if we can come up with a way to make them float? And so he invents naval mines. And he goes to the Russian government and he's like, check this out. And they were like, give us so many of those. We need just an unbelievable
I wanted
amount of those.
so many of those. Who was the head of Russia at this time?
It was Nicholas the First. He
Okay.
was the Tsar of Russia at the time. He was right between the Alexanders. Alexander the First and Second was on both sides of him.
Really?
Of his reign. Yeah. And so
Who was before Alexander the First?
Alexander the Zeroth.
No, who was before Alexander the First? Give me the whole rundown here.
I'm gonna. Okay, so Alexander the First was before him was Paul the First.
And then before Paul was Catherine. Okay.
Catherine the Second. Yeah.
Catherine the Second?
Catherine the Second.
That's
yeah.
interesting. Catherine the
Before
Great
that was Peter the Third.
was Peter. Okay, so we need to do an episode because Catherine overthrew Peter, her husband.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they had Paul.
Yeah. I'm trying to see when the first Catherine was.
But when was Catherine the Great? The Catherine the Second? What was her reign?
Oh, I am way. Hold on.
You're way too far. You're too deep looking for Catherine 1.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me just. Give
Yeah.
me a second. Give me a
I
second.
remember I've been scrolling looking for Catherines before. Back when I was single and I'm just on Tinder. And I'm just like, give me a Catherine.
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 She was 1762 to 1796.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I knew she reigned for like 30 years.
Yeah.
Good for her.
So he goes to St. Petersburg, Emmanuel Nobel, and he invents the mine. Russia is like, we need as many of those as you could possibly make. And then once you make as many as you could possibly make a lot more. And so he opens up a factory building
Making mines.
Becomes
A
very
gazillionaire.
rich, very rich, like overnight.
And that's the key. If you ever want to get rich, make something for the government that could kill a lot of people. That's been the secret for centuries.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, look at the people who are rich now. They're making technology that could wipe out a lot of people.
Yep. So in 1842, the family...
You wouldn't believe the ideas I've got.
In 1842, he moves the family to St. Petersburg with him, and they're all now very wealthy. And so Alfred gets a really good private education. And so during this time, he learns Swedish, French, Russian, English, German, Italian. He gets proficient in poetry, and just learns all these different things, learns sciences, all like really like a Renaissance man. Think about. Still sick, but like not like a good sick, like still physically sick, but sick intellectually also. Sick. Bro, you're intellectually so sick. So he gets very intelligent. And in 1850, he moves to Paris, where he goes to study science more like professionally and become a chemist. And there he meets a guy by the name of Asciano Sobrero. This is him. And Sobrero is famous because
I think we need to bring back these little bow ties. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, those are like they're
like the KFC bow ties.
They're barely bow ties. Honestly, what they look like, stick with me for a second, is the ties on trash bags.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
They're barely bow ties.
Yeah.
And they look good.
And they look good. I like them.
They look good.
Yeah, just go rip off the little black tie on your Glad trash bags.
Yeah.
Do you use name brand trash bags?
No.
Didn't think so.
Of course I don't. Why would I splurge for name brand?
I'm able to do that.
Oh, okay.
Because I invented
bombs.
I invented mass war. It's crazy.
So
I invented. What'd you invent? What's your contribution to the world? Explosive devices. Cool.
So Sobrero's famous because he discovered nitroglycerin. And it wasn't intentional. It was an accidental discovery. He discovered it was explosive. He then brought that as a scientific discovery.
Right.
Somebody else found out about it, started making bombs with it. And in 1847, he actually expressed deep regret about discovering
all these people do. Same thing with Oppenheimer. They all are like,
He straight up says, when I think of all the victims killed during nitroglycerin explosions and the terrible havoc that has been wreaked, which in all probability will continue to occur in the future, I'm almost ashamed to admit to be its discoverer.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is he didn't like proliferate it. He just discovered it, wrote a paper.
But is the argument that someone else would have,
I mean, maybe. So he works under Sobrero, and Sobrero and him, he learns everything about nitroglycerin. And
Sobrero is French?
In Paris.
Okay. And at what point in his lineage did they open the mall food court location?
I think that was in like the 80s. It was like his great-great-granddaughter.
Got it.
His great-great-great-granddaughter.
Opened a pizza place in the mall.
And it's underwater.
Great-great-granddaughter. She's selling slices at the mall. Wow, I'm a really good singer. Thank you, Blair. I'll be here all week.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Things I Learned Last Night. If you like this show, we would love to see you in our Patreon. It's a great way to financially support the show. We don't make money from this. It just helps us to pay the people who do make money from this, like Alex and Robert, our editor, and maybe one day me and Tim.
Maybe one day.
But only if you join.
Only if you join. We can't
We're
get
waiting.
paid
We can't get paid
until you pay.
We can't feed Tim's kid until you join.
He's hungry. In the arms of an angel. So
I ordered something on Amazon to go to Tim's house, and then Tim's wife was like, "Why'd he do that?" What do you mean, why'd I do that? She was like, just order it to your house. Your wife will get it. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm on the road. I need it now.
Yeah.
And we have the ability.
Yeah.
I think about that so often. You just used to order stuff and then be like, no, I'll get that in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Or in the 1800s, whenever.
In like a few months.
A few months.
Yeah.
And now it's like literally like last night on the plane, I ordered that.
Yeah, last night.
On the plane.
And you're like, it'd be convenient if I could have that tomorrow.
It'd be great if I could have that tomorrow. And it got to your house.
Yep.
And then your wife was
now.
like, I don't like that he did that. Well, Bree, if that is your name.
So
I'm
Alfred,
nervous, dude. She doesn't listen to this.
Alfred Nobel.
I can say whatever I want about your wife.
I'm not nervous.
My wife listens to this show.
I'm not nervous.
My wife loves our show because she loves me. Your wife doesn't listen to the show. What does that say about you and your little nub fingers?
So
your mom listens to the show.
Alfred Nobel fell in love with nitroglycerin. He was like, this stuff is sick. It blows up. And it blows up really easily.
Yeah.
It's like too easily.
Yeah.
If you like move it just a little bit, it'll explode. And he loved that about it.
And this guy is who we named the Nobel Peace Prize after.
So he goes back to...
I know that it is. I'm just trying to figure out how he got there from the bombs.
So he learns in Paris about nitroglycerin and all this stuff.
And this is Alfred, right?
Chemist. Yeah, this is Alfred.
And he's like, my dad invented bombs.
Well, naval mines. He didn't invent bombs, but he invented naval mines.
Yeah, my dad was the bomb guy.
My dad is Bomb Boy. That's what he calls himself.
Bomb buoy.
Yeah, he has Bomb Buoy. He has these ads that run during the football games on the weekend, and it's like in that little local ad slot where it's like usually like the first.
And they're like,
advertiser.
dude, we should make a commercial that is so local ad looking. That's how I'm gonna promote my special. Just
that's really funny.
Local ad, just yeah. That's a better idea.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of like weird like There's like
just
a
a
lion,
slide that
like
comes
a white
in,
tiger,
and it's clearly like just. There's some of these people are still using clip art logos.
Yeah,
dude. It's crazy.
Yep. And so he moves back to St. Petersburg in 1853 at the beginning of the Crimean War, and he says, "Dad, you're never gonna believe what I learned about." And he's like, "This stuff called nitroglycerin. We can make really better bombs with this stuff." So they start using nitroglycerin to make better bombs. And the Crimean War kicks off. Becomes a huge deal. They're working on these bombs. They're manufacturing a lot of them, and they keep using this over and over and over again. 1864 comes around, and there is a factory that they have that is preparing nitroglycerin, and it accidentally explodes, and it kills 5 people, including Alfred's younger brother Emil, who was 21 years old at the time. Alfred this kind of wrecks Alfred. This honestly wrecks like the whole family. Emmanuel, only a couple years later, like Emmanuel went into like a deep depression.
Yeah.
And a couple years later, he dies from a stroke. And a lot of people say that it was like the stress of that whole event, like led to his actual death. And Alfred then kind of vows, he's like, I have to come up with a way to make nitroglycerin safe, because it was so dangerous to handle, because it was so sensitive.
Yeah.
That literally, like if you just bumped it just right, it'll blow up. And so he's like, we got to come up with a way to make this safer.
It's a liquid, right?
Well, I think at this time, I believe it was a gas, the way they used it at this time.
Is the liquid what makes it not as crazy? I mean, that's what I'm saying. Is it?
Well, what he does is he gets this island in the middle of this lake, and he says, I'm gonna build a lab, and I'm gonna go there by myself. I'll be in the center of this lake, and I'm gonna find a way to make this safe. And so he spends years boating out to the center of this lake, where he then works. And then he works all day trying to mix different compounds together to make nitroglycerin safe. And his original idea is like, if I can make it a solid, it will be more stable. And so like, I got to figure out how to make this a solid, and make it still like have the function of being an explosive and have the same yield, but be stable.
Sure.
And he tries all sorts of different materials to mix with it to turn it into a salad or a solid.
Yeah.
And nothing is working until he finds, what is the material that he finds here? Let me see if I can find this. Hold on, let me.
Okay, while you're doing that.
Up.
Hey, this week's sponsor is this guy's 1985 Chevy C10. He's got it listed for $10,500. It's got 75,000 original miles. That's not that bad. That's pretty low. 305 with automatic transmission. Pretty much brand new tires. Fully loaded Silverado. Very reliable truck. Newly redone interior. Let's take pictures. Let's look at the interior real quick. Wow, that looks pretty sharp. So if you're interested in that, this guy's out in Overland Park. Message Jace, and I'm just going to message right now, let him know. Hey, just promoted this on the pod.
Ask them if they heard of us when they buy. Whoever buys it, ask them if they heard.
Hope you sell it.
Good luck.
All right.
Use code TILLN when you buy. Yeah, here's the money. Also, TILLN.
So I love this bit.
This is such an insane bit.
So you just tell them you've heard about it from this podcast, you know? That's really funny.
So
you should laugh.
Thanks. So at this point in time,
it's terrible.
They were using nitroglycerin as a liquid. It was in a liquid state. And he said, okay, if I mix it with some other material, I can make it into a solid.
Yeah.
And he tried a lot of things: sand, powdered charcoal, wood shavings, brick dust, cement, all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
He couldn't find a material to use for it. But in a twist of fate, because he was working in the middle of this lake, there was this like microscopic dust that would float around the lake in the mornings. And he's like, what is this? And so he ended up collecting some of it and finding out that this was actually this substance called kieselguhr, which is a fine powder that is the fossilized remains of very tiny organisms called diatoms. And it's very porous. The fossils are very porous.
Okay.
So he found if he mixes these this powder, which is fossils, with liquid nitroglycerin, the pores would absorb the liquid nitroglycerin into tiny, tiny, tiny little pores. And that separation of the liquid nitroglycerin in the pores of that was enough to make it stable because they never made contact with each other.
Oh, okay.
And so you could then have essentially this powder version of nitroglycerin because it was each of those little kernels of that powder was full of nitroglycerin, was now stable. But there was nothing that caused it to detonate. So he actually invented the first detonator, which interestingly enough was a essentially small unit of just a little bit of liquid nitroglycerin that you would detonate, and then that detonation would trigger a chain reaction through all the powder because it would then catch all the rest of the nitroglycerin.
Gotcha.
And so it was this weird twist of fate that because his brother died in that explosion and he went to this specific lake, he discovered that powder and mixed that powder with it to make an actual functional powdered version of nitroglycerin.
Okay.
And he used
so
that.
when we in the old timey cartoons and stuff, when they're pushing that handle down,
that's that detonation. Yeah.
Okay.
And he then took this powder and he invented dynamite.
Yep.
And this was groundbreaking.
This was dynamite.
Yeah, actually, it was dynamite.
Well, because this is how they start blowing, holes into sides of mountains.
Yeah, coincidentally, the timing of this invention was very significant because at the same time, almost months before this, the pneumatic drill was invented. And so it allowed them to drill into mountains a hole just big enough for you to drop a stick of dynamite in there and then blow up the mountain. And what was really interesting about this is gunpowder existed before this. There was other explosives that existed.
How powerful is dynamite?
Well, here's what's interesting. Gunpowder and all that existed before this. There was explosives before this, but gunpowder, the way it moves is it's a chain reaction explosion.
Right.
And so it actually moves slower than the speed of sound. And what it does is the way that they describe it is it separates rock, but it doesn't pulverize rock. Where dynamite, nitroglycerin, it moves faster than the speed of sound. So it pulverizes rock and it turns it into a dust. Where the
regular explosives would break it apart, but you just got to move big boulders.
A bunch of boulders to move and things like that.
Yeah.
This turned it to dust.
Right.
And
this is 64? 1864?
1864 was when that explosion happened.
Oh, so it's a couple years later.
When dynamite actually entered 1867.
Oh, wow.
He patented dynamite and then they start manufacturing it. He starts his business, Dynamite Nobel, which is what brings dynamite to the world. He actually, what's really interesting about this, is
why'd you say Nobel at the beginning?
Is it
just to throw it off?
A little bit. His whole thing, a little bit. His whole thing was, I want to make safer nitroglycerin.
His whole thing was, my dad was the bomb daddy.
My dad was the bomb daddy. I need to be the bomb baby.
I'm the bomb baby.
I'm the bomb baby.
No comma. I'm the bomb baby.
Bomb baby.
Mr. Bombastic.
So he's like, I have to make a safe version of nitroglycerin. His brother died from it, and it wasn't just his brother. There was multiple explosions happening at the factories across the country, and so he's like, I need to make a safe version of this. His original brand that he put together for the dynamite was Nobel's safety powder, which good thing he didn't go with that because I don't think that would have flowed as well.
Right.
And so he used dynamite. He took that from I don't remember if it was a Greek or Roman god. I think it was Greek. For explosive.
Wow.
And so dynamite ended up being the name, and that name stuck. And
dynamite.
This ended up being just a dynamite.
It is the biggest. That was the biggest invention of that.
It was a massive invention. It was used in so many things. Made him.
His family's probably still making money from it too.
It made him extraordinarily wealthy.
Right.
And so he continued inventing things. He actually, for years after that, would invent different versions of explosives. He actually invented this thing called gelinite, which is very similar. It sounds it's exactly what it sounds like. It's basically like a hair gel that blows up. And so that was in 1876. He also invented ballastite. Which is very interesting because you might have heard of the term like fog of war. And in this era, gunpowder was smoky. You would shoot a gun, there'd be smoke everywhere, and then you couldn't see anything. And also, everybody saw exactly where that shot came from because there was so much smoke.
Right.
And so there was a big market for it. We need to find a way to make this be a gun without smoke. And he invented the material ballistite, which is the powder that is in bullets
Again,
to this day.
If you want to get rich, just invent things that other people can kill people with. That's the secret.
And so that's still used in a lot of explosives
crazy.
and rocket propellant to this day, which is crazy. And so he's creating weapons of war is what he's creating.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
And it's a big deal. This is also at the same time there's a big the first anarchist movement kicks off. And this was before the term anarchy like we see it today. And they call themselves the anarchists. They existed in the United States. And the anarchists, they would use dynamite to blow things up and do terrorism.
Yeah.
And so before this moment, before this invention really, terrorism wasn't really a thing because there was no efficient way to kill a lot of people at the same time.
Right.
If you wanted to do something like that, you would have to go do it by hand, and you'd usually get stopped before you could cause a lot of damage.
Right.
But this was the first time that it was really easy.
Accessible.
Yeah, for people to just go do terrorism. And so Nobel effectively invented terrorism.
I don't know about that. I mean, listen. If someone buys a car and uses that car to rob a bank.
Yeah. So he, throughout the course of his life, he was very focused on his work. Didn't put much effort into his social life or into relationships or anything of that nature.
Yeah.
And as he got older, he started to feel lonely. And so in his late 40s, in his early 40s, when he was 43 years old.
I've spent my whole life bombing, and now it's time to love bomb.
He was 43 years old in 1876.
Okay.
Let me get this actual
age difference. Did he marry a 14-year-old?
No. I want to get like the word for word what this advertisement said.
Oh, he put on an advertisement for himself? He put out it was in the paper. He said, "Do you like pina coladas and getting caught in the rain?" Alex left his mic on, and I heard Alex go, and it was rewarding.
So he was 43 years old, 1876. He took out an ad in the paper, and he said, "I'm a wealthy, highly educated elderly gentleman seeking a lady of mature age, versed in languages, and to be a secretary and a manager of my household." He took out that ad and put it in the paper. And
a secretary and manager of the household?
Yeah, he was looking for someone to fall in love with, but he was a little bashful.
But he was also kind of like, you got to be useful. That's crazy. So at my show the other night in Houston, there was a couple who sat like up front. They wanted to talk a lot.
Yeah.
And they had been married for 9 months.
Yeah.
And then they got divorced, and they've lived together for the past 9 years.
Oh, wow.
And I was talking. So they took up the whole show because I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And so she had moved out. Then COVID happened, and she moved back in, and they live in different rooms. And I said, so do you pay? Who owns the house? Well, he owns the house. He pays the mortgage. I said, okay, do you pay rent? And she goes, no, I do all the cooking and cleaning. And I said, so you guys are married? And she goes, no. And I said, are you dating other people? She goes, no. What are we doing here?
That's crazy.
It sounds like you're the secretary and manager of the home.
Yeah, you're the secretary of his estate.
And that he's a wealthy guy and is
he's a wealthy elderly gentleman. What's crazy is he called himself elderly. He's 43.
That's what I was thinking too. We should just start referring to ourselves as elderly. It'll make it sting way less when we finally do get there.
And so, coincidentally, a woman by the name of Bertha Kinski responds to the ad.
Okay.
And she says,
hot.
I'll come.
Oh boy, am I sick. I sure do need Tim Stone's Get Well Quick Trick. And what is it? It's simply chug an entire gallon of orange juice. Wow, I forgot. And then this shirt reminded me. I'm so glad that I have this shirt as a public service announcement, a public health service to other people around me. Do your part. Get this shirt. Shop.tilln.com.
Yeah, that's how I like them. Black and white photo. Hot. Her name's Bertha.
Bertha Nikinsky.
I love a girl named Bertha.
So she comes to work for him, and they immediately hit it off. They get very close very quickly. They spend a lot of time.
She finds out that it wasn't just a secretary job.
They go on carriage rides all the time, and they have like deep conversations on these carriage rides. And she works there for a few weeks, and then she just disappears, and he doesn't know where she went. Like she just disappears without a trace. Ends up finding out that she ran off with this guy by the name of Arthur Gundasser von Suttner and eloped with him, which is very odd. And so she moves to Georgia, the country, not the state, and and starts a life with him. And this crushes Alfred.
Yeah.
And for years,
she blew up his whole world.
Kind of. And he kind of wallows in grief for a long, long time until one day.
How long is a long, long time? A couple of years?
Let me see if I can see the exact date on this. In 1888, so this would have been like a decade later about.
Wow.
In 1888.
You're still hung up on that girl you did some carriage rides with for 3 months? 10 years later?
In 1888, he sees, he's reading the paper, and he gets to the obituary section. And this is the obituary. This is the actual obituary. Obviously, this is not in English. So here's a fake version of it that has been put in English, and then for some reason they put this picture on here badly. This is what it says. You want to read it?
Yeah, the merchant of death is dead. Dr. Alfred Nobel, who made a fortune by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before, died yesterday.
And he sees his obituary in the newspaper, but he's obviously not dead.
Okay.
What happened was the newspaper mixed him up with his brother Ludwig, who died the day before. And so the newspaper saw that. They're like, oh, that's the bomb guy. And they wrote this obituary about him.
So he sees this obituary.
Yeah.
And is like, I need to change everything about me.
Well, he sees his obituary and it changes his life because he's like, oh, this is what people think of me. And he always had this defense.
We were big fans of a guy who wrote a couple books, but this is what a lot of the self-help stuff tells you to do.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think this is bad. When I make my annual life plan, reading your eulogy, like writing your eulogy is part of it.
Yeah.
Of like imagining if you died, what would your obituary say?
Yeah.
And I mean, if your obituary says the merchant of death,
yeah.
What do you think? What do you think mine would say?
Honestly, the merchant of death goes pretty hard.
The merchant of death. The merchant of death bullied me in the Panda Express parking lot.
So this, because he had this argument about the stuff he was building, because he had this, and this is going to sound familiar to you. He said, there is no peace council or committee that will bring peace to the world. What will bring peace to the world
is violence.
He said, what will bring peace to the world is the knowledge that your adversaries have weapons more powerful than anything you could imagine. And so it will stop you from fighting each other because of the threat of the weapons that they possess. And so he said, I need to build the biggest weapons possible to end war.
And, oh no. But like, and it sucks because it's true. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, Yeah,
Well,
I don't know, man.
What is interesting is like
The bad guys are gonna build it.
the concept of mutually assured destruction, which
Right.
is what we have today, in reference to nuclear bombs,
Which
has
is-
been relatively effective because it is true. If really the United States and Russia, every other country, they don't really have an arsenal large enough, but the United States and Russia got into a nuclear war with each other, the world ends.
Yeah.
And so it does work in that scenario.
Right.
But for Alfred Nobel, he was building what we today would call small explosives. And so nothing he was building was big enough to have that effect on people or on nations.
Right.
And we see that throughout history because it was used to kill a lot of people for a long time in big wars.
Yeah.
And so the idea eventually came into fruition to be
but
somewhat true.
100 and something years later.
Yeah, and it's still loosely true. It's still like we still don't know if this is true. Like it still might not be true. It's worked for a little bit. It's held for a little bit, but that doesn't mean it's accurate. You know?
Yeah.
But anyways, so he really believed in that. The irony is he had this pen pal that he talked to who strongly disagreed with that, and this pen pal was someone who he's been talking to for years, and so he popped off a letter to her right away when he saw this.
Okay.
This paper, and this pen pal was a woman by the name of Bertha von Suttner, which was his secretary 10 years ago that ran off with other men. They still talked for 10 years, writing letters to each other, and she.
Hey, know you ran away, but just miss you. People think I'm the merchant of death. What do you think about that? Which, hey, she's older in this picture. Still hot. Still hot. Oh, my gosh. Look how hairy her arms are. So she ran off with somebody else and then just kept him on the hook? That kind of sucks.
I guess.
That's a bummer.
I guess you could say that.
Just let him on for all those years. She's like, no, I'm going to leave him.
Well, here's what's interesting. So she goes to Georgia. She becomes a baroness, and she becomes like this advocate for peace. And she and him, they write each other, but the writings that they have for like 10 years are debates on how to achieve peace. And she thinks that the way to achieve peace is by actually being peaceful, and he thinks the way is building bigger bombs. And so they're debating on that for years. He sees this and he says, I think you might have been right. And so she actually wrote this book called Lay Down Your Arms, which was a novel, but it was kind of like those novels where they have a point.
Yeah, there's a point. There's a message.
So there's a message to it. She also starts this International Peace Committee, which ended up being a big thing. So she became world famous as like this peace advocate.
Yeah.
And so he sees this, and it has this like profound effect on him. And so he sits in his mansion. This is his mansion at the time, with his vast wealth.
Pretty good
and
mansion.
He calls his executor of his will, and he says, I want to update my will. And so his executor says, okay, what do you want to do? He says, I want to take 95% of my wealth, forget my kids. I don't want them to have it. And he says, I'm actually going to I want this to go on to an organization that I want to call the Nobel Prize organization.
Okay.
And so he puts together this Nobel Prize.
So really the Nobel Peace Prize is just him trying to make up for all the death he caused? Is that what we're doing? The Nobel Peace Prize is named after the least peaceful person of the 1800s. And it's just to make up and it's just so that in his post life it can be like, oh, he actually was peaceful. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, he basically is trying to buy.
What about the FIFA Peace Prize? What's the history on that? What did FIFA do?
I mean, what is crazy? So he allocates 94%.
Hey, we're
of
giving
his
the
wealth.
TILLN Peace Prize to whichever authoritarian person wants it, you know?
He allocates 94%.
Give me
of
the
his-
Peace Prize or else.
He allocates 94% of his wealth to go towards this peace commission. And
1% to go to Bertha.
he ends up dying in 1895. The executor of the will ends up transferring that money to this peace committee at the total of 31.2 million Swedish kroner, which adjusted for inflation converted to US dollars is $340 million
Okay.
today. And so that money goes over. His family was furious and they were trying really hard to get that money back. And what's really interesting is the executor of his will actually smuggled the money out of the country in carriages to get the money out because he was like, this money can't be in this country. His family's going to get it. And so and this was before money was digital. And so he had to physically drag all this money out of the country to save it. And so he took a revolver. I don't know if it was a revolver. He took a handgun and all that money in carriages and smuggled it out of the country away from the family. Started the Nobel Prize Committee. And the prizes were in physical science, chemistry, medical science, and then literary work, and then the famous fifth prize is the Peace Prize. And so these were kind of his way to buy the way he would be perceived in the history books. He spent $340 million.
You can just buy the way you're perceived in history books.
Yeah, he spent $340 million to change the way he's viewed. So now when you hear Nobel Peace Prizes, you think of, or when you hear the name Alfred Nobel, the first thing you thought was the Nobel
Peace Prize instead of
Dynamite.
the murder merchant.
Yeah.
The merchant of death.
Yeah, the merchant of death who invented devices that killed more people than anything in history, which is crazy.
So it would be like if we had the Oppenheimer Peace Prize.
Yeah, exactly, actually. And
that's crazy. I didn't know. Did you know all this?
In 1901, they gave out the first set of prizes.
Sometimes I look at Alex and I just fully expect him to be like, did you know all this? And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay.
So in 1901, they gave out the first set of Peace Prizes. Here they give these coins with him on it. Yeah. And so you get this coin.
You even tried to get me away from it too, because he looked really familiar.
Yeah.
And he looks familiar from the coin.
And then in 1905, Bertha von Suttner becomes the first woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize.
Okay.
And what's ironic is the description of the Nobel Peace Prize is word for word what she said we need to achieve peace.
Yeah.
Is from a letter from her. And so he modeled the Peace Prize after
So
her.
she gets it and she goes, thanks. This should be the Bertha Prize. That's what we're calling it from now on.
We're calling it the Bertha Peace Prize.
That's the Bertha Peace Prize to me.
Yeah. And so what's crazy is there is up until recently, his company's still in like operation. This is their current logo.
The Dynamite company
Nobel.
Is still in business.
Yeah, Dynamite Nobel. They still make explosives. And
what are we even doing
outside their factory? Their factory has since moved, but outside their factory, there was this statue that was erected. And in this is supposed to be the gate to peace. And it's boarded over, and there's a plate with holes through it to kind of give you the vision of shrapnel or bullet holes or something like that. The top of the gate says Nobel. And then the bottom there's two coffins. And on the coffin, the first coffin, this is the total death count from 1901 to 1984 in wars. And so between 1901 and 1913, there's 100,000. 1914 to 1918, 10 million. 1919 to 1939, 10 million. 1939 to 1945, 55 million.
Yeah.
45 to 84, 50 million. And so they're attributing all these deaths to him because he built the explosives. And then on the other coffin is every Nobel Peace Prize winner, which is crazy.
Up until 2002, I guess.
2002, yeah, where Jimmy Carter won that one.
Wow.
And so it really does make you think differently about the whole Nobel Peace Prize when you realize that it is a guy who recognized his legacy was going to be a bad legacy.
Yeah.
So he spent $340 million to change his legacy by creating this little coin that he can give to people who were good people. But he still made insane amounts of money off of devices that would be used to kill millions of people.
That's crazy.
Isn't that nuts?
Well, speaking of bombs, we have an episode about Castle Bravo that you should check out. And that's an older episode we did. It's about the biggest bomb explosion that they had put off since. Do you remember?
It was the biggest bomb that the United States ever done.
Yeah, crazy, dude.
Nuclear bomb.
So, also, if you want next week's episode right now, you can join us on Patreon. We don't give any coins or anything. We should. We should make little Patreon coins.
Little Patreon.
My tour
Patreon
dates,
Peace Prize.
My tour dates, as always, are on paulruddtheactor.com. Thank you for listening or watching our show. We appreciate it a lot. Share this with somebody. Tell somebody about the thing. Tell somebody about it. Tell somebody, because it would help us a lot to grow. Amen. So, We need you to help us blow up. Right? Fiddle off.